What I'm about to tell you today, you won't find in any official history book. And I mean that seriously. Something happened during the filming of The Passion of the Christ that Mel Gibson never fully wanted to explain. Something the actors experienced firsthand, that the crew witnessed with their own eyes, and that to this day continues to spark debate among those who were there. I'm not talking about behind-the-scenes trivia. I'm talking about documented facts, real testimonies, coincidences so disturbing they're going to give you chills from minute one. So, if you're the kind of person who believes that behind the greatest stories, there's always something deeper than what we're told, this video is for you. Stay until the end, because the last part is the one that's going to hit you the hardest. I guarantee it. Before we go any further, if this kind of content speaks to you, if you love uncovering what hides behind the great moments of history, subscribe right now and hit the bell. That way you won't miss a single one of these videos. And if you're already subscribed, drop a comment below and tell me, do you believe there are forces that go beyond human reason? I love reading what you think. All right, let's start from the beginning. It was the year 2002 when Mel Gibson decided to finance out of his own pocket a film that no Hollywood studio wanted to touch. The project was too risky, too controversial, too different from anything that existed. We're talking about a production filmed entirely in Aramaic and Latin, two dead languages, with no subtitles at first, and no commercial compromises whatsoever. Gibson was obsessed, and that obsession, according to his own words, didn't come from him alone. In multiple interviews, the Australian director stated that he felt a guidance he couldn't put into words. He spoke of a presence that accompanied him throughout the entire creative process. His critics called it religious fanaticism, but those who were with him during the shoot in Matera, Italy, described something far more difficult to dismiss. Jim Caviezel, the actor who portrayed Jesus Christ, is perhaps the most powerful testimony of all. And not because he's an exaggerated or sensationalist person. Quite the opposite. Caviezel is known for being a serious man, a man of few words, deeply spiritual. And what he experienced during those months of filming is something that, heard in his own words, is impossible to ignore. During production, Caviezel was struck by lightning. Not once, twice. The first time occurred during the filming of the Sermon on the Mount. The sky was clear, and suddenly an electric discharge struck directly down on him. Eyewitnesses described how his hair lit up, and a kind of halo briefly appeared around his head. The production crew was frozen in shock. Caviezel, incredibly, suffered no serious injuries. The second time was different. That strike also hit the assistant director, Jan Michelini, who had already been struck by a first bolt of lightning weeks earlier. The statistical probability of this happening is practically impossible to calculate, and yet it did. But the lightning wasn't the only thing. During the filming of the crucifixion scene, Caviezel developed pneumonia, dislocated a shoulder, cut his back deeply with the whip during one of the takes, and suffered hypothermia. All of this while portraying exactly the sufferings that history attributes to the character he was bringing to life. When asked if he would do it again, he said something that stayed with everyone who heard it. He said it was the hardest thing he had ever lived through, but also the most real. Now, to truly understand what was happening on that set, you have to understand the historical context of the story being told. Because many times we stay on the surface of events without asking ourselves what was underneath. And that's exactly where things get really interesting. First century Judea was a political, spiritual, and social pressure cooker. Rome controlled the territory militarily, but could not control the religious fervor of a people who had spent centuries waiting for what they called the Messiah. The Temple of Jerusalem was the center of the known world for Jewish people, and the power of the Sanhedrin, the supreme religious council, was enormous. So much so that Rome preferred to negotiate with them rather than confront them directly. In that context, the figure of a Galilean preacher who proclaimed a kingdom not of this world represented a threat on multiple fronts. For Roman power, he was a potential political agitator. For the Jewish religious elite, he was a blasphemer who challenged power structures that had been maintained for generations. And for the common people, he was something they had never seen before. Someone who spoke to them directly, without intermediaries, with an authority that required no titles or wealth. What Mel Gibson tried to capture in his film was not just a story of faith. It was a political and social moment of brutal complexity, and that complexity is exactly why the film generated such massive impact, such controversy, and also, according to many of those who participated in it, so many inexplicable events. I want to pause here for something important. If this kind of story fascinates you, if you love going beyond what official history tells us and discovering what truly drove the great civilizations of the ancient world, I have something that's going to interest you a lot. In the description of this video, there's a link to an ebook called The Secrets of Wealth of Ancient Civilizations. It's a digital book you can read on your phone or computer, and it walks you through discovering how civilizations like Rome, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Greece generated, accumulated, and protected their wealth in ways that still teach us brutally relevant lessons today. And the best part, it costs only 10 euros. No joke. For the price of a coffee and a pastry, you will uncover principles that the ancient elites guarded jealously for centuries. And by purchasing it, you're directly supporting this channel, so we can keep producing content like this. The link is in the description. Go check it out. Now let's continue. Let's go back to the set of The Passion of the Christ, because there's more. Much more. One of the episodes least mentioned in mainstream media involves a set extra. A local man from Matera, hired to play one of the Roman soldiers in the flagellation scene, broke down crying uncontrollably during one of the takes. When the production crew came over to ask what had happened, the man said that the moment he raised the whip toward Caviezel, he felt something stop his hand. Not physically, but something. And that in that instant he had the absolute certainty that what he was doing was real. Not acting. Real. This kind of testimony repeated itself multiple times throughout the shoot. People who were not religious, who had arrived on set for purely professional or economic reasons, who left the experience transformed in ways they didn't know how to explain. How do we interpret this? That's where things get philosophical. Some say that the power of art, when executed with absolute conviction, has the ability to create energy fields that affect everyone who participates in it. Others attribute it to the collective faith of a crew that deeply believed in what they were doing. And some simply say it was the hand of something that goes beyond human understanding. What is a documented fact is that The Passion of the Christ became the highest-grossing non-English language film in the history of cinema. A film that no studio wanted to produce, independently financed, shot in dead languages, with a relatively unknown actor in the lead role, and without a conventional advertising campaign. It grossed over $600 million worldwide, and it did so largely through word of mouth from religious communities that began filling movie theaters as if they were places of worship. That sociological phenomenon also deserves attention because it tells us something fundamental about the power of stories that touch something deep in the collective psyche. Stories that last centuries, that move civilizations, that make extras hired for 50 euros a day break down crying, are not accidental. They have an invisible architecture that makes them resistant to time. And that, precisely that, is what connects to the ancient civilizations I mentioned a moment ago, because they understood something we have forgotten in the modern world, that real power, whether political, spiritual, or economic, is always built on narratives, on stories, on symbols that people are willing to defend with their lives. The Romans knew this. That's why they built the Colosseum, not just as entertainment, as a demonstration of power, as a narrative of supremacy, as a symbol that said, "We are Rome and Rome is eternal." The Egyptians knew it. That's why the pyramids are not just tombs. They are declarations, messages encoded for future generations that say, "We existed, we built, we endured." And what happens when those narratives collide with the story of a man who was crucified on a hill outside Jerusalem 2,000 years ago? What happens is that the most powerful narrative in human history faces off against the most sophisticated power systems of its era, and wins. Not militarily, not economically, narratively. That is what Mel Gibson tried to capture. And perhaps that explains, better than anything else, why the set of that film was also the stage for events nobody could fully explain. Before I run out of time, I want to ask you something. Write in the comments which part of this video impacted you the most. Was it the lightning strikes on Caviezel? The extra who couldn't raise the whip? The reflection on the power of ancient narratives? I want to know what resonated with you. Comments are what keep this channel alive, And every one you leave helps me understand what kind of content you enjoy most. And if you haven't done it yet, go check out the ebook in the description. The Secrets of Wealth of Ancient Civilizations. €10. An entire world of knowledge that ancient elites protected for centuries, and that today you can have on your screen in seconds. It's also a direct way to support this channel, so we can keep bringing you this kind of content week after week. Mel Gibson's warning, at its core, was not about lightning or accidents. It was about something bigger. He himself said it in an interview that few people remember. He said that whoever decides to tell certain stories must be prepared to pay a price. He didn't say it as a threat. He said it the way someone speaks who has lived through something that changed them forever and doesn't know how to explain it any other way. And perhaps that is the most honest thing we can say about all of this. There are moments in history, there are stories within history, that seem to have a life of their own, that call the right people at the right moment, that generate events that don't fit into any rational category, and that when they end, leave everyone who participated in them with the feeling of having been part of something that went far beyond themselves. That was the Passion of the Christ. That was Mel Gibson. That was Jim Caviezel standing on the top of an Italian hill with his arms outstretched, being struck by lightning for the second time, and telling the world, this story deserves to be told, whatever the cost. See you in the next video.